Hi, this is Fedmir Gradevsky, Policy Director with NPHI, and this is our weekly policy update for May 14th through May 21st. First, I want to begin with a reminder to the membership that we are distributing a weekly COVID-19 impact survey to hospice CEOs and their delegates, and it should already be in your inbox. So please take a look and complete the survey before the deadline. We really want you to complete the survey because we're looking for a high enough completion rate so that we can more effectively communicate your interests with Congress and the administration. Now moving on to the policy update. Since we last spoke, House Democrats passed the Health and Economic Recovery Omnibus Emergency Solutions Act, or the HEROES Act. As you might remember, this is House Democrats' opening proposal between negotiations with Senate Republicans. Overall, the legislation is focused on providing more funding to new kinds of providers and entities across the board, including states, safety net programs, and employers. Overall, in terms of timing, this will be a much more extended timeline for negotiations between Senate Majority Leader McConnell and Speaker Pelosi, as Senator McConnell has expressed that he does not share the same level of urgency for this next round of funding. In terms of the details in the bill, there are 4 overall provisions that we want to highlight for you. The first 2 are related to additional funding. 1, an additional $100 billion for the Provider Relief Fund on top of the $175 billion Congress has already appropriated. And 2, additional flexibilities in the Advance and Accelerated Payment Program, which basically serves to provide providers upfront loans based on their past billing amounts. House Democrats would reduce the interest rates for these loans to just 1%, would give providers more time to repay the loans, and would modify the recruitment process so it's more provider-friendly. In terms of the additional provisions, the third is an additional flexibility under the Paycheck Protection Program to allow employers to defer payment of their payroll tax. And finally, House Democrats would create a refundable payroll tax to allow employers to reimburse their employees for expenses related to COVID-19, such as a funeral for the death of a close or member of their family. Finally, in terms of next steps, we're encouraged to see that there is additional funding for providers in this bill. However, we recognize that NPHI's priorities are not reflected in the bill, namely through expanded access to bereavement services, specific funding for hospices, and priority distribution of PPE. This is why we'll be working even more closely with House Democrats and Senate Republicans to make sure your priorities are reflected in the final bill. And finally, we have an additional update on the Provider Relief Fund. As you may remember, HHS initially distributed $30 billion, followed by an additional $20 billion. Now HHS has begun to communicate with providers that have applied for the additional $20 billion. And in some cases, HHS has determined that providers have already received their total distribution from the $30 billion. Therefore, they're not eligible for any additional funds from the $20 billion. Here, we want to note that HHS is using the phrases such as a complete distribution of funds from the General Distribution Fund, and makes no mention of a need for providers to pay back the initial funds or any sort of clawback provision here, which is encouraging for our hospice programs that may have received additional funds from the initial $30 billion distribution. Thank you, and this has been the policy update for May 14th through May 21st.